Gentlemen? Yep. Oh, good morning. Earlier this week, I met with the Northern Kentucky Heroin Impact Response Task Force in Erlanger. We talked about their efforts to help people get healthy and sober through any means available, including their 2 new mobile needle exchange units, a large residential recovery center that will soon open in Northern Kentucky, and their faith-based efforts to reach people. Many in the meeting repeated what I have heard from family after family after family across Kentucky, that their loved ones who are suffering from addiction or that they lost from addiction began that addiction through prescription pills. This is not unique in Northern Kentucky. Nearly 80% of people abusing or using heroin began their addiction by using prescription pills. That means the true source driving addiction isn't on our streets, it's in our medicine cabinets. But these dangerous drugs didn't materialize out of thin air. They flooded our state by design. Manufacturers and distributors created campaigns telling doctors and their patients that these opioids were safe, that there was no real risk of addiction. From day one, I've dedicated myself and this office to finding solutions to the devastating opioid epidemic and holding those responsible accountable. In the past 2.5 years, this office has pursued fentanyl and carfentanil dealers. We provided over $8 million to 15 drug treatment centers all across the Commonwealth. We funded the heroin rocket docket with an additional $2 million. We launched the Kentucky Opioid Disposal Program, announced Dropbox partnerships with CVS, cracked down on rogue doctors and Suboxone clinics, hosted numerous community drug forums throughout this Commonwealth, and thus far, we have filed 5 lawsuits against opioid manufacturers and distributors for contributing to this epidemic. These 5 lawsuits are against Endo Pharmaceuticals, AmerisourceBergen, Janssen, Cardinal Health, and McKesson. This office is doing good work, but we cannot and will not stop fighting for Kentucky families. We cannot sit idle for one day because every day we lose on average 4 Kentuckians to a fatal overdose. Today, I'm announcing that we are filing suit against Walgreens. Walgreens contributed to our opioid epidemic through its dual role. It is both a distributor and a pharmacy. That means Walgreens, as a company, knew not only how many opioids were flooding into Kentucky or any community, but even how many opioids were going to a single family. That gave Walgreens real-time data and a front-row seat as opioids flooded and devastated our communities. Walgreens is a significant distributor to Kentucky, shipping so many opioids that any reasonable company, and certainly any company that claims it is a healthcare company, would know that it was wrong and that it needed to stop. Its pharmacies filled so many opioid prescriptions that the company could see on the individual, community, and even family level the harm that was occurring. But Walgreens did not stop. And just look, in the second quarter of 2018, Walgreens reported revenue of over $30 billion. That means it has made hundreds of billions of dollars a year while Kentucky families have suffered. Today's action marks the 6th lawsuit we have taken against opioid manufacturers and distributors. It is our commitment that anyone who helped fuel this epidemic has to be accountable and to take responsibility to be a part of the solution. We are filing this action in Boone County in Boone Circuit Court. We know how hard Northern Kentucky has been hit by this epidemic. Their families deserve to have one of these lawsuits in their community so that this company has to come in and answer for its actions to those families. We've heard the voices of families who've lost loved ones. Filing in court won't bring any of those loved ones back, but it does seek justice, and it can help that next generation of people at risk from addiction to not fall into that life and to be together with their families. I keep my promises. I will continue to hold companies that help fuel this epidemic accountable. They have a duty to help us repair, to dig out, to fix the problem they helped create. I'll take questions first on this, and then we can move to anything else. Yes?
Jared, what's the status of the other 5 lawsuits?
The first one we filed, Endo Pharmaceuticals, is continuing in Franklin Circuit Court. They recently filed a motion to dismiss where their arguments were absolutely offensive, claiming that they had no responsibility and that we did this to ourselves. We are fighting that motion very hard. We anticipate that case will continue in Franklin Circuit Court. The other 4 defendants have tried to remove these cases to federal court and get them moved to the multi-district litigation in Cleveland, Ohio. I think Kentucky families deserve better than having the devastation that occurred to them heard in a different state, that they would have to drive 7, 8, 9 hours just to get to a proceeding. So we are fighting to get those brought back to Kentucky. That fight first occurs for us at what's called a multi-district litigation panel that makes an initial decision about sending it to that Cleveland judge. And then if it gets to the judge in Cleveland, we'll argue for a remand there. Yes?
General, this may be a silly question. I haven't read this whole thing, but what makes Walgreens different than any other retail chain or big retail outlet? I mean, you mentioned
Right.
CVS, Kroger, Walmart.
It's
I don't know.
the difference.
How are they different?
The difference is it's also a distributor like AmerisourceBergen, McKesson, and Cardinal Health. That as opposed to just getting its orders filled, that it has an active role and the data on that nationwide distribution. In fact, it now owns 26% of AmerisourceBergen, who we have already sued. So it has a dual role. If you look at the chain that may go from manufacturer to distributor to pharmacy and sadly then to Kentucky families, it is in a unique position to know exactly what was going on at the national, state, and even community level. They also have over 70 stores in Kentucky, so the data that they had is significant.
That wouldn't be true of CVS or Kroger or some of the other places where people may get their prescription drugs.
Well, what we're doing in all of these, and my understanding is no, that this is unique for Walgreens. But we are certainly going through any party that we believe may have contributed to the opioid epidemic, and we're looking at their culpability. You know, there's a reason that we file many of these in the order that we do. And in each case, we make a decision by the individual defendant. And here we believe that Walgreens not only contributed to the opioid epidemic, but could see in real time the harms and had a duty to the DEA as a distributor, and certainly had a duty to Kentucky families to recognize that what was going on was wrong and to do something about it.
Without compromising your investigation, can you say how you were tipped off that Walgreens was doing this?
We're not the first state to sue Walgreens. We're the second state. Delaware has sued. They're also a defendant in this multi-district litigation, which means that other communities have also sued Walgreens. But Walgreens' role as a distributor, as well as owners of these retail pharmacies, that's not a secret. That's been known. So when you look at the culpability of distributors, Walgreens is a company that you would look at.
Does Walgreens have the responsibility to monitor this sort of thing? Aren't they just filling requests from doctors and from patients?
So as a distributor, under Kentucky and under federal law, they have a duty to alert the DEA to suspicious and large orders. And they failed to do that during this significant period of time where millions upon millions upon millions of opioids flooded our communities. It's that same responsibility that we talked about when we sued AmerisourceBergen, McKesson, and Cardinal Health. And those reports were absolutely critical. They could have raised the red flag that may have been seen and it may have been stopped. But we also believe they have duties to Kentuckians. They have duties to be honest and transparent and not engage in deceptive practices. And we believe violations on both the state law as it relates to distributors, as well as the Consumer Protection Act. The violations have been made in all those.
What period of time does this cover?
I believe we are David?
2010 through 2013.
Okay, 2010 to 2013. Okay.
2000?
We'll get you a firm answer on that, but you all may know David Johnstone. He is a lifer in the Attorney General's office and has done some amazing work for a long time and is certainly doing amazing work here.
So you're saying that during that period of time, there were an unusually high number of opioid prescriptions being filled?
Yes, yes. Not only prescriptions, but dosage. You know, the millions upon millions of individual pills that have flooded this state. And again, Walgreens is in a position to not only know how many pills are coming into Kentucky overall, but also how many pills are coming out of that one retail store in a county with a population that should never support that amount. They have that extra piece of knowledge that creates duties and obligations for them to respond like any responsible corporate citizen should.
You know what some are going to say that talk about political motivations. Walgreens is kind of low-hanging fruit, well-known. We'll get your name out there. How do you respond to that?
Well, I believe that the families in Kentucky support these lawsuits. I see and I hear it all across the state. We have been devastated by this opioid epidemic. And these companies, I mean, Walgreens made $33 billion in a 3-month period. But how many dollars has it put back in Kentucky to help us dig out of this devastating epidemic? The fact is they've made money off the products that have caused our devastation, but they have yet to invest in a way that helps our families get out of it. And I don't think that's too much to ask any of these companies. And we are going to continue filing these lawsuits. And we're not the only one. There are Republican attorney generals and Democratic attorney generals. There are cities and counties that are all filing these. And we're doing it because it's the right thing to do. And I'm tired of you know, the concept of partisanship and the rest. It's time we start doing the right thing because it's the right thing. And that's why we filed these lawsuits.
Do you have any idea how much of a percentage of business Walgreens might have in Kentucky with the opioids?
Well, we do, but the data that we're using for that, there's currently a confidentiality agreement over. We believe we're going to be able to make all of that public very soon, but I can tell you they are a very significant distributor, and they are a very, very significant purchaser of opioids that made their way to Kentucky.
You said earlier that they were in a position, they had a duty to notify DEA.
Mm-hmm.
By inference, they did not make those reports.
That's right. They did not make the necessary reports that they should have been making on a weekly basis, in my opinion. You know, if millions upon millions of pills, which we know from the other lawsuits, 18 million pills from McKesson flooding into Floyd County, Kentucky alone over a 6-year period, and they can see that data in real time and know that every single week is devastating for that community. All right. We can turn to any other subject.